G'day everyone, Jason Nunn, Fisherman's Warehouse, Tuckerwalk, Marks Point. This Friday's fishing report. Beautiful day out there today, and of course tomorrow is even going to be warmer. Some late showers Sunday and a little bit of rain coming in on Monday. This weekend, of course, Newcastle Game Fishing Club is hosting the East Coast Classic off the offshore coast of Newcastle up towards Port Stephens, and no doubt down here off Lake Macquarie. Been a few marlin around last weekend. We had an opportunity to duck out with Mr. Stansfield. Got a nice little striped marlin early in the day, but a lot of the Lake Macquarie boats did catch fish out on those mid-canyons. Quite a few striped marlin, not big fish I must say, fish around about 60 kilo. One of the boys got a nice blue around about estimated 140, and another black marlin. So there was a few marlin out there, but again, we're seeing this inshore marlin bite, probably Port Stephens north to Foster. It has been up and down. Some days there's been some phenomenal results, and other days not as much. So it is starting to die back a little bit. There are a few dolphin fish around, and of course last week's report I made mention how few there were. They're not a lot of size. We got one on the shelf. He'd have been lucky to be 3 kilo, and that tends to be what's happening on the Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, and of course the Terrigal Fad. They're only small fish. They will get bigger as the season goes on, and I do expect some better fish as we move into April. The water temperature at the moment out wide, it was reaching heights of around about 27 degrees out wide. Back on the shelf in the afternoon it picked up to about 25 too. But the water temp at Moon Island, for example, is almost 24 degrees. There's still a lot of bonito coastally, but there are now a few cobia poking around. There was one caught off Swansea last night, around about 18 kilos. So we're now starting to see some of these cobia move down and no doubt feed on some of these bonito. Been some good kingies offshore as well, and we're now starting to see that little bit of resurgence of trag, and that all come around with that full moon that rolled through on Tuesday night. And of course we're just going now, we're going to fade off with that back part of the moon into next weekend. So things looking good. Been a few mulloway around as well, but a real resurgence on tailor, and there's been no doubt some tailor offshore mixed in with some of these bonito schools, but they've been filtering their way along the beach, and we tipped that up about 2 to 3 weeks ago when we started to see some really nice fish on that Belmont Blacksmith stretch. Those fish now are obviously one around the island in amongst the bonito and back on the beach early and late, but they've started to move back into Lake Macquarie, and we're seeing some really nice fish now that 50 to 55 centimetres. They're fish generally over 1.5 kilos, so they are a greenback, very, very good eating and a great sports fish themselves. But everyone's getting them, whether you're trolling or casting chromies. Even some of the boys fishing late into the evening with floating pilchards on that tide are getting some beautiful tailor. Mixed in with them, of course, there's quite a few fish around that sort of like 40 to 45, so it's a very good assortment of tailor along our beaches and of course into our estuaries. If you're going to get in the lake itself, a lot of kingies, guys. This has probably been one of the best kingfish seasons we've seen for quite some time. They've been thick in the Swansea Channel, particularly around the bridge, but there's a lot of schools of fish working in and out of the lake, and we've had a lot of reports over the last week or two of guys just fishing local jetties, but Murray's Beach just to the north of us here, and even around Belmont Bay, where they're seeing schools of 6 or 8, maybe 10 big kings, fish from around about 80 centimetres to possibly over 1 metre, working their way around through the shallows, chasing mullet and obviously looking for squid. There have been a few squid around, guys, but again, not big numbers. I spoke to the Slender boys this week, 4 hours they put in for 16 squid. So that gives you an indication on just how tough it is. And again, they're just not coming on. I reckon we may not see a real improvement until next year. We're going to really need to get this spawn out of the way, and hopefully we get a lot of recruitment. Today we just received some tube worms in, of course, and they have been in short supply. So there's still a few whiting around the flats, but we're now seeing very good numbers of bream. Not only coastally because of our travelling fish starting to move in, but in the lake itself, there's been some beautiful fish. Late in the evening is really the pick. The other thing that doesn't really get mentioned much is the amount of squire or small snapper that we're getting in the lake. Some beautiful fish out there, fish above 50 centimetres, up to nearly 60 centimetres on occasion. So there's some beautiful lake snapper, we'll call them, mixed in with a few of the mulloway. Now flathead, of course, are starting to move out. It is into March now. We're starting to see these flathead push down the channel, go back along the back of the beaches, but they're starting to tip on to the backs of the reefs, and that's going to happen right up until May, when we see quite a few of them then move back in after that sporting period. Been a few ludrick around, and I know ludrick are one of those fish that mostly the guys associate with winter, but there are quite a few fish around now, and of course that's in that build up to the mullet run. And as I said last week, I think because of these such mild conditions, I reckon that Muller run's going to be probably late April, back into that Anzac Day. All in all, guys, it looks like a great weekend coming up, particularly tomorrow. Take advantage of it. Just got to get out there. Plenty of block out on. You can see how hot it is here now. I'll talk to you next Friday, and hopefully we get some good results. See you then.